Hey, I'm going to give you a heads up right at the beginning of this video that it's a pretty long one. I think we're looking at like 45 minutes at this point. If that's not something that you are interested in, I have a link to my website below that has a lot of the kind of breakdowns, just bullet points, as well as side-by-side footage. If you want to get that quick digestive, that is totally your option. Just go check that out. Otherwise, this video is broken into basically 5 parts. That's kind of an introduction, talking about the features of the camera. There's a section talking about the positives. There's a section talking about the negatives. There's a section where we compare it side by side to a bunch of similar cameras on the market. And then we're going to draw some conclusions based on all of those things. So if you want to watch all of that, you're absolutely more than welcome. I'd love to have you do that. If you don't, just there's more digestible, quick version in the description if that's something you want. But otherwise, stay watching and we'll dive just hardcore into the Insta360 One R. Before we go on to the rest of the video, I just want to kind of drop a quick, hey, if you're not subscribed, please do that. If you haven't liked the video, please do that. And please leave a comment. It can be whatever you want. It's all helpful to me. But I would love to know what your thoughts are on the camera before we even get into it. So please just jump in now, leave a comment, hit that like button. Thank you so much for your support. Today we're going to do an overview of the Insta360 One R. I'm a huge fan of the Insta360 family. I've got my Insta360 Go, I've had a One X, I've had the original Insta360 One, and this is just a continuation of my love affair with Insta360. The Insta360 One R is just a continuation, an evolution in their line of cameras that I think is an awesome step in a direction that can support the drone racing community and, as I guess, many others in a bunch of different ways. The first and foremost of this is that it's got the moddable, the switchable options, right? So like you can actually take the whole camera apart into a bunch of different pieces and then swap in other mods to make a different version of the camera. So like with this mod, the 4K mod, you can actually turn the camera around and have like a little selfie camera now that when I power it on, you have the screen facing back at you, so like you can see what you're doing on the camera and all that. Or if you're more in the more traditional mode, you just flip it back around, you plug it back in, and now it's back into the standard. Now I can film what's in front of me instead of what's behind me, or at myself, or whatever you want to say. But what I'm loving about this as a camera is that it can mount on a drone, obviously like just with a normal GoPro strap, but then you can also take it apart and put on the 360 mod. Not only that, but Insta360 has worked really hard on developing their like hyper smooth competitor called Flow State, and I think it might actually be slightly better than hyper smooth in some ways and worse in others. But you know, for a certain set of purposes, I think that this stacks up really well against the GoPro, especially for kind of run and gun situations. So we're gonna dive into all of the features of the One R. We're gonna go through the good stuff. We're gonna go through the bad stuff, and then we're going to go ahead and do a big comparison. We're going to take the Insta360, line it up against a GoPro, line it up against the GoPro Max, up against DVR, all of that stuff, so we can see the difference between each of these cameras. So the most obvious feature that we have to talk about is the mod situation. So I have the Insta360 One R Twin Edition, and the Twin Edition comes with 2 things. It's the 4K camera, which is their cheapest item, the 360 camera, which you can see has lenses on both sides, and then it also comes with the brain, which is the screen end, and then the battery. So if I pop off the battery here, which I always forget which way the switch goes, and then I pop off the 4K mod, I can then stick on the 360 mod. You just have to make sure that you have all of the little nubbins on the bottom there for the actual battery that goes on the bottom, and then put the battery, and then now it's booting up into 360 mode. And so you have the ability to choose between a 360 camera, which has a lot of cool features for FPV drones, behind the scenes, all of that stuff, or the 4K mod. And what you can even see is that you can actually change where the camera is looking just by swiping around on this, which I think is a pretty cool. You can't even do that on the GoPro Max, which is absolutely insane to me. And then, you know, when I'm ready to switch it back over to the 4K mod, just pop it off, plug it in, and then stick the battery on the bottom, and now we're ready to record 4K, super stabilized, all that stuff. So the modding option is absolutely phenomenal. And more than just these two options, there's also a version of the camera that has a 1-inch sensor, which means that it's going to be better in lower light. It's going to let more color information into the camera. It's going to produce a better picture. Unfortunately, I do not have the 1-inch mod yet. They've had a hard time keeping them fulfilled, so I am not able to test that for you yet, but I'll do a follow-up to make sure that we get that included. And then the other thing that to mention is that there's also versions of this camera coming where you can actually take it, split it apart, and then have it mount on like both sides of a drone. So if you have it mounted on the top and the bottom of a drone, what happens is that the seam line, which is the space between your two 360 lenses, will essentially be all the way around the drone, and that means that the drone will disappear in air. So you can essentially look in any direction from your drone in post and figure out which direction and reframe the entire 360 degree shot wherever you want in post, which is going to be pretty awesome. So between those couple different things, we've got the 4K mod, the 360 mod, the 1-inch sensor, and then like an air unit kind of sensor. The battery life on the One R has been pretty phenomenal. Like, I've shot for 2 hours at a time. It's this whole thing is the battery, this whole bottom piece, and it does an awesome job. And you can just plug, if you have more of them, you just plug in a new one and it's ready to go. And then you can also charge it over USB-C. One of my favorite features for 360 cameras is the ability to do time lapses that can be rearranged in post. So if I put the 360 mod on here and plug that all back together, and I just set this down somewhere, or I put it on a tripod over here while I'm working on a quad on my bench, or I'm setting up a course at the field, I can just put this in the middle of the action, hit time-lapse mode, it's going to record everything around it, and then after in post, when I get back to the computer, I just sit down and I point the camera where I want to focus on the action, and it captures that whole time-lapse. So I'm not like picking up my time-lapse, moving it over here, picking up my time-lapse, moving it over here, picking up my time-lapse, moving it over there. It's just this perfect all-in-one solution for doing good stuff like that. On top of a time-lapse, it does a really good job of hyperlapse in the same way. Because it's recording in all directions, it's stabilized, you can just walk around and record the entire moment. So say I'm going on a hike to go to a new flying spot or something like that, and I can just hit time-lapse mode, maybe strap it on my head or on my bag or something like that, and I can just continually change where the camera is looking throughout an entire hike getting into a new flying spot, and that creates better and better content. Not only does this camera do faster than normal speed, it also does slower than normal speed. You can record up to, I believe, 8 times slow motion, which would be 200 FPS, 240 FPS, as well as in different modes. You can do that in the 360 mode or in the 4K mod or the other sensors, and that allows you to slow down time and see what's going on. Especially with the 360 mod, that's really cool, because then you can kind of get these cool bullet time effects where, like, as the camera is moving past something, you just... and that makes for some really, really cool stuff. In my opinion, the Flow State software, their stabilization attempt, is very, very, very good. We're going to get into why I think that and what I like about it, but that is one of the features that this camera offers. In addition to great onboard software performance, the apps, like the suite of apps that Insta360 has to offer to allow you to edit 360 footage and 4K footage are phenomenal. And I would actually venture to say that they're better than GoPros. Like, I've been playing around with some GoPro Max, like their 360 degree camera footage, and I have a hard time editing it in the way that I can with this and the app that it comes with, or the on-computer app, and we'll talk about both of those and why I like them both so much. But yeah, one of the things that has kind of blown me away about the Insta360 family is how easy it is to edit the 360 degree footage. Like, I'll take this, I'll set it down on a racetrack, and just let it record in 360 degrees, and then I'll follow the drone through the track, and just in post, like, follow it around, and that makes for, it almost looks like there's somebody else holding a camera, like, looking around, chasing the drone and all that stuff. But that is something that this can allow me to do as a single operator, as like one person that's doing the recording at a time. So that's pretty cool to me. So far in my testing, and I've probably flown this camera 100 times, I have not had any durability issues. It's actually in pretty good shape. Like, the biggest scratch that I have is here on the top, and it was actually not from a crash. It was from me like accidentally scratching it while I was trying to fiddle around with something. So like, but it's held up really well. No cracks in the screens, no dents or issues or anything like that. I have crashed it, I promise, but it's no problem so far. That being said, I haven't like slammed it into the ground to see, and obviously the lenses on the 360 degree camera are fairly well exposed relative to like the body of the camera. So, you know, something to keep in mind that it's probably not going to be as durable as something like a GoPro, especially when it's in these 3 pieces. But like not once has this failed. Like it has never come apart on me. Like it's durable. It's locked in there. Like you don't have to worry about it. This camera by itself as it is waterproof to 5 meters. That's kind of a feature that we've become accustomed to, especially in the drone world. Like we're not afraid to dump our quads into a little bit of water sometimes, and having a camera that's not going to die when that happens, very important. An advantage of this camera over top of the One X is that it has in-body playback, so I can go into the little menus in here and actually go and find the video and watch it back there. I don't have to connect it to my phone or to a computer to be able to view the footage. That's not a make or break thing, I think, for most people, but it's a really nice thing to have when you need it in the field. The next thing I want to do is take a look at the apps, both on mobile and on desktop. I want you to see kind of the awesome features and the power of the apps that they have to offer, so that you can take your 360 footage or 4K footage and make really cool videos with it. So once you're in the Insta360 app, you can go into the album section, and you can see all the files that are on either both your camera and local, or just your camera. On the camera tab, if you go down, you can see, you know, here's all the videos that I have from my little day of testing. Not sure what this clip is, but it's a clip. Scroll in here. So now we're flying. And then we have the option to, first of all, turn on and off flow state. So now I've turned on flow state, so stabilization is on retroactively. So we don't have to have stabilization on one way or another. We can choose to have it on or off. But we could also turn it off, and now it's going to be kind of in that normal mode that you're used to seeing FPV footage. So I think that's pretty cool, being able to change that after the fact. But then you can also change the field of view after the fact. So it records everything at the widest. I think Ultra actually does some sort of stretching, and I think wide is more normal perspective without the kind of super viewy kind of look. Some people like it, some people don't. I happen to really like it a lot. Download it and all this stuff. But the power of this app really comes when you get into a 360 file. So this is a 360 video here, and I'm going to scroll through. And the first thing you can do with this button here is edit or trim out the fat. So like, you know, there's stuff at the beginning of the video that we don't actually need. So I'm just going to scroll right until I take off here. Should be any second. So here it is. You can see me in the background, and then I'm going to use the other end and scroll until it lands. This is pretty normal for video editing software for these sorts of things. And give it a check mark, and now we have just the flight selected. With this button here, and in the timeline in the bottom, you can choose to have a keyframe. And what that allows me to do is to pan the camera around wherever I want it to look, set whatever field of view I want, set the roll angle even. I can change the roll angle if I want to, and just move the camera around to whatever I want it to. So now if I leave it like that and hit play, it's going to take off and start flying. And now it's going to respect what I said on that last keyframe as long as I want it to. So now I'm going to pause, add a keyframe, let it step forward a little bit, add another keyframe, and this is when I want to go to tiny planet mode. So I want to be able to see the whole drone and have it zoom backwards. And I play again. Now it's going to do this forever. But here's the trick. When I go back to before those two keyframes, as soon as I get to them, whoosh. And now it changes the field of view. And for some reason it didn't respect. I got to turn this first and then hit the keyframe. So turn, keyframe. So now if I scroll back, it should turn it around as soon as we go. Boom. And then I want to turn, keyframe, tiny planet. If I scroll back, Whoosh. It makes it all nice and small. Add another keyframe, pause, and now I'm going to have it look down so that we see the drone with the whole planet kind of flying around underneath it. So now this allows you to get pretty creative with how you edit your footage. What I like the most about the apps suite for... Oh, another thing you can change is you could also set it to be 9:16 for this. So which would be normally kinds of YouTube-y videos 1:1, which is, I think, more Instagram friendly, and then 9:6, 23:1, which is like the super cinematic-y. This would be like what movies are shot in. And then 9:16, which would be like Instagram story or TikTok or whatever you want like that. So I like that you can change all those things after the fact, and that you can just kind of record and then everything kind of magically works in post. Now, everything that you're seeing is happening here on the app can actually happen the same way on the desktop version of the software. So I'm just showing you on the app because I think that's the way that most people will want to use it. But if you go on the desktop version, you can also record and keyframe and do all these same sorts of things. So pricing on the Insta360 One R, the 4K edition, which is the one with just this lens, starts at $300, which is $100 less than the GoPro Hero 8. If you get the 360 camera version, the price jumps a little bit up to $450. You can get the twin edition for $480, so it's going to come with both the 360 and the camera. And then to compare, the GoPro Hero 8 right now is $400. So you can get all three of these things, I guess 3, maybe 4, depending on how you want to look at it, for less, just a little bit more than a GoPro Hero 8, or you can get just the 4K mod for $300, which saves you $100 off of a GoPro, comes with awesome stabilization, and you don't need to do much work in post to make it work well. So now that we've had a good, broad, general scope overview on what the Insta360 One R has to offer, I want to talk about the things that I thought were good about it, like the benefits. Then we'll talk about kind of the not so good things about it, and then we'll kind of make some conclusions about the footage that we have looked at. So the first really positive thing that I want to mention about the camera is the flow state stabilization. The flow state, to me, looks better out of body than Hypersmooth does. Now, that being said, I think I still prefer RS Go footage over top of flow state, over top of Hypersmooth. But if I was going to just run and gun, if I had to just grab one camera and film and not have a chance to do any kind of post-production on it, I would pick the One R over top of the GoPro for their stabilization. The flow state just looks a little bit more smooth. It doesn't have any little jerky or kind of like hidden movements to it that I have kind of started to notice out of Hypersmooth too. The camera itself is super convenient for mounting on drones. One of my biggest issues with the One X, which was the kind of tall previous version of the Insta360 family, was that it didn't really mount on drones very well. It had a 1/4 inch thread in the bottom, but it just it stuck out. It was really long and kind of oblong. This is much more GoPro form factor, so I can just strap it on to a top plate of a quad just like I normally would with just a battery strap, or I can put it in its cage and mount it with the normal GoPro kind of whatever their little system is that allows you to mount stuff. The One R, as compared to previous One R models, has the review screen, so I can do playback, and that allows me to see the footage really quickly, what I filmed, and that, to me, is great. I know it seems like a pretty minor feature, but the ability to take the camera apart, turn it around, and get kind of like the vlog mode has been useful for me in a number of different ways. Obviously, I do vlogging and I record myself, so being able to kind of just do this normal thing is super useful. But another thing that kind of unexpected to me was sometimes I want to have the lens for the body of the camera on one side of the drone or one side of whatever it is, or another at any given time. Okay, first of all, it's a little bit weird that it's a new day and I'm wearing different clothes and all that stuff, but just ignore that. Just don't pay attention to the man behind the curtain. So the next great thing about the One R is its onboard screen. The GoPro has this, other cameras have it. The previous generations of Insta360 did not. The One X, for example, a tall one, didn't have the ability to like go on here and actually go through and do playback and check your settings and format your cards. Like, it had some menus, but it didn't have full playback, and that's a huge feature for the Insta360 One R. Of all of the cameras that I've gotten to play with in this similar category, the Insta360 series, especially the One R, has an extremely solid connection between it and the phone. You'd be amazed like how many times I've found that the phone apps just kind of crash or don't work, but for whatever reason the One R's seems to work really, really well. I've talked to a lot of other people that don't necessarily agree with me on that, but for me, the connection between the camera and the app on the phone have been flawless. It's a super simple thing, but something I think is worth mentioning is that the One R came with this little rubber lens protector for the Twin Edition. Just goes on, covers the lens. It's a great little feature, something that I wouldn't have thought of, but it's something I'm super glad I have. This lens protector also works on it without it on the mod. Then you add the mod and build the camera. And it's all back together. It still works, and then if you have the cage on it, it'll still fit over the cage too. Crazy. It's a great, simple idea. Another great feature of the Insta360 One R over competitors like the GoPro is that you can turn stabilization on and off in post, so you can choose which look you want the footage to have after you've shot it. And speaking of stabilization, I've found that flow state does some things better than hypersmooth, including that hypersmooth sometimes does this weird hitching thing where like it kind of like will like lock and hold a position and then kind of continue with the smoothness again. Flow state doesn't do that. It's always continually allowing the smoothness to move with the shot, and in my mind that looks better for an out-of-body stabilization software. The Insta360 One R supports HDR mode. While I haven't always had super good success with making that application work, the fact that it is there as a feature to be able to allow you to move from low light to high light to low light again and again really quickly and be able to get detail out of all of those, I think is really important for FPV people, especially because we're constantly going under trees, into gaps, all that stuff where you want as much dynamic range out of the camera as possible. So we've spent a bunch of time talking about the stuff that's good about the Insta360 One R, but what about the stuff that could use some improvement? First thing that's pretty disappointing for me is that there's no option for standardized mounting of the camera. So in the past, Insta360 had a 1/4-20 thread in the bottom here where you could like screw it onto a tripod mount or onto whatever, but for whatever reason they got rid of it on this camera, and they don't have the GoPro like labia things, these little guys. You have to use the cage that comes with the Insta360 in order to mount it to GoPro stuff. I think that honestly, this is a genius move by GoPro to be able to support having the GoPro mounted on stuff just out of the body. So I wish that Insta360 had included something like that when they released their camera. Another downside of the Insta360 One R is that the touchscreen tends to be sometimes a little bit glitchy. Like if I show you here, I'm going to go into the menu and I'm going to go over and start scrolling down to format the SD card. And once I see the SD card, I'm gonna start scrolling down, and I see the SD card, and now it's up there, and it kind of gets a little bit glitchy, like where like the momentum of swiping, and eventually I get it, and it's not the end of the world, but it's really sometimes kind of inconvenient. It just doesn't it's not smooth, but it still works. I don't know if this is the case for all people that have used it. There used to be an SD card door on there. There's a little plastic bit that came with the Insta360 that was on there, and that broke off like day one. It just did not hold up. It fell off as soon as I accidentally kind of like tweaked it a little bit too hard. So that's my fault. It's on me, but I wish it would have stayed on there a little bit better. And the final thing to note that is not great about the Insta360 One R is that the audio really is pretty bad. Like if you listen to, especially prop noise is awful, but like there's constant wind noise, there's it picks up audio, like you get stuff, but the balance is all over the place. The audio, like the wind noise is pretty much unusable. Like there's options in the camera to turn stuff on and off, but honestly all of them are pretty terrible. That being said, you can use a USB-C to 3.5 millimeter adapter and put your own mic on it. If like, you know, if for example you wanted to use that with the backwards facing screen to do some vlogging, You absolutely could with an external mic, but you're definitely not going to get away with what is on board the camera already. At the same time, kind of who really cares? I mean, audio on an action camera really is not all that useful in the first place, at least in my opinion, but you can decide if that's a feature that's worth pursuing for a better camera over something like the Insta360 One R. This is the Indianapolis Marion College velodrome or cycleplex. Like there's a skate park over there. There's a dirt bike BMX track there, a velodrome park, and then all sorts of dirt trails throughout. And Mr. Michael Durr here has volunteered very at its risk his GoPro Max to be compared against the Insta360. So we took the One R, and then we also took the Max. Thank you. Do you have a Best Buy warranty on that, by the way?
I don't.
Oh, we should have probably figured that out ahead of time. And he also volunteered himself as a filming subject to just kind of run around so I could get two similar shots, one with the Max, one with the One R. So we'll go ahead and just play those side by side. You can compare them. You can see what's different, what you like about the other ones. And then, as always, the full clip from these flights will be uploaded somewhere else, so you can click and really kind of dive in and compare the two. So thank you very much, Mike.
No problem.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Mick. And stay flying. Wait, what? Ah! So apparently the GoPro shot that we did not film in 360, but instead in the Hero Max mode with max boost. So it's like super stable and it looks pretty good, but it was not the intended test. So we're actually going to go back out and film that again without having Mike there on his bike and all that stuff. That sucks. All right, anyway, well, let's go. I've done a lot of weird things for these random internet videos for useless points, but this might be one of the stranger looking ones. Strapping two GoPros or two cameras side by side just so you can see what they look like in the air. So I just want to make sure that this thing actually flies before we get out into a field. Yeah. Alright. Alright, it seems to fly well enough. Not great, but it'll get the job done, that's for sure. The purpose of this whole video is to test out the Insta360 One R, but I want to have a similar conditions test between each of the cameras. So I've got a GoPro Max with me, I've got the One R, both the 4K and the 360 degree mod, and then I've got a Hero 8 which will run hyper smooth, real steady, and we'll have all of them just raw, no stabilization as well. So let's get set up and we'll go through all of those flights back to back to back. It's gonna be a lot of flying, and it's gonna be all in the same spot. But what I'm gonna do is take all of those videos and upload each of them so you can look at them like directly to see if you want to see anything different. Like you can pull them up full 4K or probably 2.7K for most of them, and be able to see them side by side. So you know, it's not gonna be the most exciting flying, but I'll show you a little clip from each, especially the side by sides, but then I'll also have a link in the description for all of the individual flights as well. So let's get to it. done filming the 360 videos, so this is the 1R in the 360 mode, and then the Hero Max is in here. And I gotta switch this from normal mode. So I flew those two cameras individually, figuring that they were both a little bit heavier cameras, and I didn't want to try to mount them both on the drone at the same time. But now I'm going to be doing these exact side-by-side with the 4K mod for the 1R and the GoPro Hero 8 with Hypersmooth and all that stuff. And I'm going to do them side-by-side, so I'm actually going to take apart the 1R, take the battery off, split them in half, then I'm going to put the mod on, and then I'm going to stick the battery back on, and boom, ready to go in 4K mode. Okay, so now both cameras for this test are going to be running 2.7K 30. The Insta360 Go, or 1R, is not going to be recording in flow state, and this is not going to be recording in Hypersmooth. They're going to be shooting raw, straight out of body, no stabilization or anything, so you can see the difference between the two. Okay, just a quick little aside for this test is I'm trying to fly a similar kind of flight profile every single time. I'm trying to do some like low and slow, some kind of faster, more cinematic-y kinds of things, some straight lines, some kind of curves and turns, some flowy stuff. And then I'm also trying to do some like more hardcore flippy floppies, so that like a bunch of different people can learn what they want from this. I know that not all of each of the style is good for everybody, but that's just my goal for this, was to kind of try to do a similar flight profile that had a little bit of everything all the way through. So hopefully that helps at least something. Okay, this is a handheld test, just walking around holding the cameras in my hand. Comparison between flow state on the Insta360 One R and hypersmooth on the GoPro Hero 8. No other settings or anything, just 2.7K 60. I'm just holding the cameras in my hand. I'm not doing anything special other than just walking. Maybe a little selfie action would be interesting. Just holding the camera, pointing it at myself, walking around. I hope you guys find this like riveting and interesting, because it's you know, it is what it is. I'm holding it with both hands now, kind of at waist level, trying to use my arms to balance out the vertical movement. Okay, I think that concludes all the tests that I was going to do here at the park. I hope that all of this has been kind of useful. There's a lot of footage to go through. I'm gonna, like I said, I'm gonna try to upload each individual clip to YouTube. I'm gonna put them side by side, like on my website. So if you look in the description below, you'll see like a link to each of those side by side results, so that you can really kind of dive in and compare them back and forth yourself. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to put all of like the original files, like just the YouTube uploaded version. I guess, yeah, it would be a lot of space and a lot of bandwidth to try to figure out a place for you to be able to download them. Yeah, so I'm pretty happy with how this test went. The sun condition was pretty much the same the whole way. It's gotten a little bit lower, but not by much. And then there was also a little bit of wind picking up at the end, but I don't think it's an unfair test at that point either, because I mean, I guess we're comparing the same camera the whole time, and it's just really a couple different stabilization settings. My theory before I get home and look at all the footage is going to be that I'm going to like the out of body better on the Insta360, and then I'm going to like the processed better on the Hero 8. So like this with flow state, just like right out of the box, done, not needing to mess around with anything, is going to be really solid. But this is going to look the best after it's gone through Real Steady Go and a color treatment and all that kind of stuff. So that's my theory, and that's what I'm sticking to for now. But we'll go back, I'll take a look at all the footage and kind of give you some reactions to what I see once I do that, and then hopefully we'll continue wrapping up this video. But thanks for coming out with me to the park. Now let's get back on home. Clean up this whole mess. So just to make some final conclusions, the Insta360 is an awesome camera. The flexibility, the ability to kind of fill in a bunch of gaps where this camera can take on the task of a bunch of different cameras is absolutely incredible to me. As a B-roll machine, capturing time lapses and hyperlapses and using it as sometimes as an A-roll machine on drones, it does an incredible job. I like the way that the picture looks. I love the way flow state works, but I'm not always going to choose it as my main flight camera over top of the Hero 8 when I have the ability to use Real Steady Go. Real Steady Go is the ultimate, the go-to, the thing that you have to beat for stabilization, and just in my opinion, flow state does not beat Real Steady Go. That being said, if you want to have a camera with Real Steady Go, you need a GoPro Hero 8, which costs you $400. Then you need to buy a license for Real Steady Go, which costs you another $100. But you can just have one Insta360 Twin Edition for $480. That gives you some different options. So, you know, you kind of have to pick and choose which features do you want, which things are the most important. How do you want to balance out your budget to support the different needs that you have? If you don't want to do a bunch of post editing and you just want that picture right out of the camera, honestly, the One R is the way to go. If you are interested in spending a little bit more time and a little bit more money to get the best possible picture, I definitely swing towards the GoPro Hero 8. I'd be curious to hear what you guys think down in the description below. We've covered like all of the features. We've compared everything I possibly can think of, and there's probably more that you guys are going to be like, why did you not include this? And I apologize for that, and I'll do my best to rectify the situation. But I'd love to know what you guys think. What do you think about the comparisons of the footage? What do you think about each of the cameras? Why do you like one over the other? Please share it in the comments. Leave comments, hit that like button, subscribe if you want to see more content like this. All of those things are immensely helpful to me as a creator, trying to put out as many videos as I can to help keep you guys entertained in these strange times. But In the meantime, thank you very much for watching this video, and stay flying.